Welcome to Playwire Live. I'm your host today. My name is Jayson Dubin. I'm the CEO and founder of Playwire. I'm joined with my esteemed colleagues and probably two of the most knowledgeable people in ad tech you're going to find probably anywhere. We have our SVP of Yield, Scott Schroeder. Yeah, Scott. Hello.
Hello.
And our SVP of Product, Luke Schoenberger. Hey, Luke.
How's it going?
I think collectively we might have between 50 and 60 years of ad tech experience. In the real world, that's like 600 years of any kind of business experience. So it's exciting. Excited to dig in with you guys today. So the topic we're going to talk about today is redefining ad tech, right? And these three words that I'm going to say right now will probably define the coming era, in my opinion, of what ad tech is going to turn into, given what's happened in our history. So quality, performance, and transparency. That's where I think this business is going. I think the industry has seen over the last decade a lot of what I would call ad tech shenanigans, where there's been a lot of people, what I would say, playing in the gray, right? Exploiting weaknesses, exploiting terms and conditions. And the buy side has had enough. Right? They're saying, we don't trust you. We want to work with you. And I can tell you from my perspective and a Playwire's perspective, I literally am screaming from the hills, quality, performance, and transparency. And sometimes sustainability, because what happens is a byproduct is by doing all these things, we're serving less ad calls, we're making less requests, and therefore less compute power. So today we're going to talk all about these three topics. The first question I'd like to ask is really, what's the current state of the ad tech industry, and more specifically, the programmatic side of the industry, and what are we seeing the most success and the biggest challenges right now? So Scott, when you think about ad tech and programmatic, what are the biggest successes and biggest challenges right now?
So current state right now, common topics are all around efficiency. They're all around quality. And there's a huge demand for what I would say is transparency. So I think in years past, when you look at programmatic landscape, it paid to play in the gray, like you just alluded to. It paid to be the C student instead of the A plus student, which meant you could do things like sending extra bid requests, maybe game some refresh logic and things like that. We're really seeing a huge shift towards topics like MFA. Is your site actually providing good content that marketers would want to buy? Are you doing things in an efficient manner that impact things like queries per second, bid duplication, carbon emissions, and things like that? So I've seen a lot of topics kind of pick up around that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms...
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of SSPs and DSPs further upstream, right? Making prioritizations based off of the quality of inventory that you send them. And that's definitely something that's important for us, right? Because we could send them everything, but we know that a lot of what we send them, they have no interest in. And even though we send it to them, they still have to pay for the compute on every HTTP request that we make to them. They have to pay for the memory to process those requests. And this is really kind of where the DSPs and the SSPs have kind of started to change the landscape and how publishers interact with them.
Right. Who do you think is getting hurt the most? In my opinion, it's the MFA guys, right? The people, or the ARB guys, the guys who are literally just generating tons of page views, buying traffic, having some kind of site, and the net result is, are advertisers gaining from that? Are they, do they, there's, if you speak to journalists, they say, hey, some people are still buying on MFA sites, right? Chris Kane is saying that, but I don't see that's possible. I don't see the value prop, and I know MFA is getting harder and harder.
I mean, if they're still seeing the conversions, right? Why not? I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I know that there's been data out there about how the conversion rate for marketers is lower on MFA sites than other sites. I haven't seen that data. Whoa, someone's microphone went a little crazy there. That data may exist. I have not seen it. But at the end of the day, if marketers are still seeing conversions from those sites, I don't know if there's necessarily a reason for them to care as long as it doesn't impact the long-term brand of their company, because at the end, they're real users, it's real traffic, and it's highly viewable. A lot of the MFA people and a lot of the R people have gotten to where they are by giving advertisers exactly what they want. And so I would be interested to see the research on the conversion data. I think that's where a lot of kind of that lies.
I've heard almost that comment so many times over and over again. You know, feed them what they want, right? Feed DSPs what they want, feed agencies what they want. So it's like if you just keep giving what they want, they're just going to eat more and more of it. But the goalposts keep moving, right? First was the click, that was the main KPI. Then went to viewability. Now it's completion rate. But you know, where's the efficacy? Where's the kind of the ROI? Where's the attribution model? Where hey, I'm showing you an ad. We're going to get value from this, and hopefully we'll have some kind of transaction. I think that's the hardest part, what everyone's navigating, in my opinion.
I think there's another trend we're also seeing where, if a publisher has questionable traffic, means of getting traffic, or if their ad density is out of whack, I think those things are starting to be pulled into the light more, and it gives buyers the option whether or not they want to buy on it. So there's like this sort of this transparency push to kind of push all these things that are operating in the gray, put it in the light, see what's going on.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of the KPIs that we're measuring right now, like I said, like viewability, completion rate, those are all great KPIs. But when you have dwell time on a site that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're showing 50, 100, 500 ads, at what point is there just banner blindness? And someone needs to step up and start measuring this, right? Where's the value prop? At what point is there just diminishing returns? At what point should ads just stop being shown to a potential customer? So interesting topic. On that topic, as we're talking about, like in the gray and what people are working on, you can't throw a rock or can't join a webinar or go to a convention without hearing the word AI, right? AI. How is AI or machine learning, or I learned the new one, MLL. Is that it? Massive. What's that stand for? Luke, what is it? LLM. Sorry, large language models. I apologize. LLM. I'm gonna rewind that. We're gonna cut that from the clip. Large language models.
We're live right now.
Right. Okay. Large language models. So what are the tools publishers should be using to kind of take advantage of, what I just mentioned, large language models, AI, machine learning? If I'm a publisher, what should I be looking to take advantage? What tools should I know about?
Yeah, so we do a lot internally with machine learning, and we're continuing to grow what we want to do from a machine learning perspective. But one of the fundamental ways that we use machine learning is to be able to make more intelligent decisions when it comes to price flooring. Right, one of the most fundamental parts of ad technology and ways that you can optimize your inventory for SSPs, DSPs, and advertisers. That's one of the ways that we use that. I don't know if there's really a easy way for publishers to be able to do that on their own right now that would be able to integrate within their systems with kind of like a flip of the switch. Scott, what other ideas do you have for publishers on how they might be able to use AI and machine learning?
I think one of the things no one really talks about with machine learning is how it improves internal workflows here at Playwire. So if you're a publisher, and a lot of what we do is conduct mass amounts of split testing. There's hundreds of tests that are conducted a month, and if there's a good result coming out of those tests, we want to implement and scale that as fast as possible. So machine learning can help install new workflows to get us revenue faster. So that's another, it's kind of a dumb one, but it's an easy one. It's easy path to more revenue if you're a publisher. There's also ways to make decisions in real time. So you mentioned our price floor controller, which processes about 2 million price floors per site per day. That is based on machine learning, and there's opportunity to iterate on that as well. The other thing are like pre-bid functions, simple things like timeouts based on different slices of inventory. So real-time timeout optimization is another way that we use machine learning. Again, it's kind of a basic lever within pre-bid, but it takes away weeks and weeks of time analyzing.
Aren't you guys really just talking about traffic shaping in using other terms? Isn't that really what you're addressing?
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of what we're talking about is from an ad tech perspective and ways that we can kind of use machine learning to optimize what happens on the page is essentially anything that feeds into the OpenRTB request, right? Any property that goes into the OpenRTB request, optimizing with the SSP to give them what they want. Looking at different refresh settings, looking at different bidders that are requested, and based off of the country, device category, browser, essentially an infinite number of dimensions, making more intelligent decisions with the SSPs, who's being requested based off of those specific dimensions for the user, and being able to constantly run experiments to see what the most optimal strategy is for your ad stack.
Right. Okay. What about signals, right? I know we spent a ton of time making sure we're passing the right signals. How important is it? So if I'm managing my own ad stack or I have a team managing my ad stack, how important is it to get the signals really spot on? Hey, I say it's a video, I say it's outstream or instream, making sure that's correct, making sure you're setting the proper size. I mean, how much does that really impact the results of a bid and how SSPs or DSPs look at you or look at a publisher?
It is more and more critical. I would say there are table stakes signals these days that if you're not passing certain things in the bid request, then you are damaging your revenue opportunity. Then there's other signals that are used maybe, let's say, in a more informative way, and they might influence some decisions, not in real time and things like that. It's absolutely critical. We've seen, through deep audits, we're talking 10 pages of technical audits, a couple signals, updating a couple signals, it can literally double an SSP's revenue overnight. Just because, once again, our job is to understand what DSPs want to eat, and we want to feed them that. So if they're not getting a signal in that bid request and they're unable to submit a bid, that's a problem. So we want to make sure everything is very viewable, visible, and actionable.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's constant, right? I've been in ad technology for 10 years, and the amount of times that you change one signal and then revenue radically changes for an SSP is almost uncountable. And for a publisher that doesn't have a lot of time to look at that and focus on that, it's just there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that they're missing out on. And so if you are a publisher and you don't even know what this is, it's probably a good opportunity for you to work with the SSPs and make sure that you're sending what you should be sending. And for a lot of the people who are listening to this, they're probably not at the same scale that we are to be able to have those conversations. So it's a little bit more difficult. One good way for you to do that is go look at other sites, larger sites that you feel like may be more optimized, and see, okay, what are they sending to the SSPs? Why are they sending this property for video and I'm not? That's a good way to look at any gaps that may exist in kind of your ad stack.
Got it. And Luke, I know you spent a tremendous amount of time along with Scott, and the biggest change from my perspective in the last 12 months is really just the definitions around outstream and instream for the video player, right? So as we think about, like, if I'm listening to this, webinar right now, and I'm a publisher, and we're saying, hey, you really got to clean up your video. You should not be sending in-stream or outstream and calling it in-stream, or vice versa. What are some of the other levers that someone could, I guess, play with that might help their opportunity? Is it player size? Is it signal fidelity? Is it quality? I mean, what should they be thinking about as they think about video in particular?
Yeah, Scott, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a few things we could unpack from that. I would say with using outstream's a really good example. So that was a signal that became a mandate for certain DSPs. And what we saw was kind of push publishers into a corner, say, look, we view in-stream as this specific thing. Like if you're a Twitch or a YouTube, this is what we think that's in-stream. If you have a sticky corner player, pass us outstream. And what ended up happening over a few months later is started seeing DSPs paying attention. So if you have a sticky player and you're passing in-stream, you could get hit with clawbacks from DSPs, which we have seen. So that's why it's also critical to make sure you're passing up-to-date signals. And to Luke's point, it's constant. So,
yeah. And the thing that you have to be careful of too is for a lot of publishers that are running a third-party provider, let's say that you handle your own monetization for display, and then you have another provider that you're using for video. You have to make sure that they're passing the correct signals for you, because they are managing your inventory and managing your reputation for you. And so if they are passing in-stream signals when they should be sending outstream signals, advertisers can block you, DSPs can block you, and it can affect the quality of your website much more than just what's happening on.
Got it. And if I'm a publisher, like, how do I go about even understanding if I'm sending the right signals? Like, how would I even go? Is it just looking at the console? Is it talking to the SSPs? I mean, I know we've struggled with this. Not everyone's completely transparent about what signals they want or have. So how do I go about even addressing that or identifying that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. I don't know. They're not the average person. A great resource is the OpenRTB documentation. Going to that, looking at the OpenRTB documentation, and then looking at the requests that are being sent to each of the different SSPs. That's a good way to start. If you are more technical, because a lot of this changes pretty fluidly, is looking at the actual pre-bid adapter to see what's being set in there, and look at kind of what the SSP is doing behind the scenes. Both of those are pretty good ways.
I would also, if you're a publisher, I'd also caution you to be aware of the nuance too with signals. For example, if you're wanting to pass your price floors in the bid request, that's going to be a different signal depending on which SSP you are. So you not only have to be aware of the nuance, but you have to ask the right questions to the right people. If you generically ask, hey, can you check all my signals? You're not going to find value. So you really need to do yourself a favor and educate yourself a little bit more and just, have some consultation.
I'm going to ask something actually very controversial. So let's I would love to hear your POV on this, but like, what's the future of tier 2 and tier 3 SSPs, right? We used to have almost 27, 30 SSPs we worked with. I think we're down to 12 or 13 at this point, something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a publisher and I'm evaluating SSPs, how many should I be using, and what's the value? Why should I be using more than 12 SSPs? If I'm a DSP and I could plug into the top 10, Magnite, PubMatic, DB360, Amazon, and a few others, why would they need another SSP, beyond those top 10?
I mean, I think it just comes down to how much unique demand that SSP is happening. If they're just sending duplicative demand, there's no reason for you to work with them. There may be some short-term benefits that you see by plugging in more and more SSPs, but in the long run, this gets back to what we were talking about with traffic shaping, is you start to send requests more intelligently. You're going to, for lack of a better word, get prioritized upstream and get better demand. But yeah, really, at the end of the day, it comes back, are they providing unique value in the auction? If they're not providing any unique value, there's essentially no reason to work with them, unless you're working with a reseller who is messing with the IDs, which in that case, someone who is just essentially strictly a reseller, they could be manipulating the IDs, which isn't necessarily bad, right? There's a couple of identity providers that's what they do, and that's how they make their money. Industry to this point has been okay with that. That there are some people that do that at the SSP level that may be providing value doing that as well.
I think some of our top SSP. So at this stage in 2024, if you're a smaller SSP, you don't have a unique value proposition, and you're not materially adding value to a publisher, I'm concerned for you, I would say. Our top SSPs, they can drive half of our revenue through curated PMPs. They offer unique formats that are available elsewhere. They don't resell our inventory, which creates bid duplication and erodes your QPS. So it's really comes down to the question, are you adding value or not? Because you can add 1,000 SSPs and they might be slightly incremental each one, but you're going to pay in the long run. It's a slow burn.
Right.
Yeah, right. Because you can make a bunch of requests short term and you're going to get some short term gain by having multiple requests upstream. And then that like algorithm that they have when there's a bunch of people that qualify for an impression, you're going to have more bids in there. So you're going to win more short term. But long term, they're going to optimize away from that.
Right. You know, I know I'm a huge advocate for quality, performance, transparency. I honestly think it's going to transform the industry in a better way, right? I think the better the quality, the better results. It's also going to clean up the inventory, and the less inventory that's available, right? The less the TAM that's not there. It's going to force people to the quality sources of inventory, and thus going to increase CPMs. I can tell you from Playwire's perspective, you know, just for everyone out there, we spent a year or two cleaning up our entire ecosystem, where we really focus on getting everyone at 70% viewability. There's no more ad tech shenanigans, and the results have just been phenomenal. Where, you know, the CPMs have gone up astronomically, the viewability has gone up astronomically. So as a rally cry, I think as an industry, really we need to get behind this. And what's funny, that's from the supply side. I've yet to see buy-in from the demand side. You know, I think there's a lot of onus on the supply side. Like, hey, clean up your act, give us quality inventory, and, you know, everything will be all right. But there's no culpability on the buy side. I mean, whether it's a bad ad or a mobile redirect or a bad buyer on a DSP seat, you know, do you ever think that's going to change? I mean, do you guys ever see the DSPs kind of, you know, I guess following their own asks and kind of like coming to the plate with, hey, we're also gonna focus on quality, performance, transparency?
You asked a controversial question last time. I might have a controversial reply, but it's kind of the age-old fragmentation that we've seen in this industry, the disconnect between the marketers and the users on the page, the publishers too. There's always been this fragmentation. And, you know, at the Jounce event, I forget who said this, but it was a really interesting comment. I mean, if things were perfectly efficient today, publishers would pick one SSP. That's it. You wouldn't need 10, 20 sometimes. So I think the disconnect is shrinking between buyers and publishers. You have DSPs approaching publishers more directly now and sort of consulting in a way that I haven't really seen before. So I think there's the willingness is there. It's like, let's build a foundation. Let's get our inventory clean. Let's address things like MFA, signal fidelity, and so on. So I think the goal's there. I think we're inching towards it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think my controversial take would be is realistically, what does the SSP do that the DSP just couldn't do on their own if resources weren't a factor? It's essentially an extra hop that doesn't need to be there. And a lot of the value that the SSPs provide, I feel like a lot of that, like over time, like long term, is going to collapse under the DSPs. And more, and, right? We see that in a lot of cases right now. That's what Magnite does. That's what, I don't even know what Xandr is called anymore. Are they still called Xandr? I was going to call them AppNexus. That's what they do. I think that there's just going to be over time a more and more direct connection between DSPs and publishers. And I feel like there's still, that still provides us with a really great opportunity to work with publishers because we can still be the filter on what would then be sending the DSPs, right?
Mhm.
Because the DSPs still need a way, they still don't want to listen to all traffic, right? There's only some traffic that they want to listen to. They know that there's no chance that they're going to be able to transact on a specific user. It's a waste of their time and resources. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was Chris Kane who said, I think there's about 20 million QPSs that go through the bid stream every second, but the DSPs can only listen to like 2 million. So that's like 1 out of every 10 ad calls just not being listened to. And companies like ours that, have high fidelity, are sending the right signals, have done all the work, and they trust us. And I want to focus on the word trust, right? I think when I had this notion of like turning things around, I said, why are they not working? What's wrong? They don't trust us. But think about it. That word trust in any business relationship, that's what the foundation's built on. When you either work with someone or go work for them or work with them, why would you work? Oh, I trust this guy. I know him. I've worked with him forever. So that's what I really want to focus on with Playwire, is that anything under the moniker Playwire, any publisher that joins us has to conform to these, to this rigor and these restrictions. And we need to form a layer of trust that transcends everything, where when they think about Playwire, we trust these guys. We're going to give them more inventory. We're going to buy on their inventory because we know we're getting quality, performance, and transparency. So I did think we're at the 27-minute mark. I think we're kind of coming up on the end of this. So if you guys could give one or two sage words of advice to anyone out there that, obviously we'd love them to come work with us and we'll fix all their problems and make them more money. But if they're choosing to kind of go this on their own, what are the two kind of like nuggets that you say, hey, if you're going to do anything, do X, Y, and Z, and this should help you in the end?
If I'm a publisher, I would ask myself 2 questions. Am I receiving an appropriate amount of support to help navigate all of the industry changes in the growing technological complexity? That's a big one. My second question would be, is my tech in a good spot, period? Am I passing signals? Is my inventory looked at favorably? So ask yourselves those questions.
I mean, if I'm a publisher and I have a limited amount of time that I can spend all of this, I think there's probably 3 things that I would do, or my recommendation would be to do these 3 things. 1, look at your signals, right? Make sure that you're sending the correct signals to the SSPs, because that can make a world of difference if you're not sending the correct signals. 2, use live intent, and we won't get into exactly what they're doing, but look at that. And then 3, try to renegotiate your fees with the SSPs, because if you're a certain size, like it may just be easy enough for them to say, yeah, go ahead, and not actually kind of draw anything out. Those would be the 3 things that I feel like you would get the most bang for your buck for.
Or if you just want to make more money, lower your costs, and not have any of those headaches, you just work with Playwire, right? That's the other answer.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you, everyone, for joining Playwire Live. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I think I could talk about quality, performance, transparency, or any of these topics for days ad nauseum. But at this point, we're going to sign off, and thank you and have a great day, and keep on ad teching.